friends. This is the program Empire of Lies, where we discuss manipulation and disinformation in Russian media, the language of power and fears of the future, how Solovyov's rhetoric shapes the image of inevitable war. In this new broadcast, Vladimir Solovyov continues the line that has become central to Russian television propaganda. Europe is weak, NATO is confused, Russia is technically and morally superior, and war with the West is inevitable and practically predetermined. The narrative is simple but extremely dangerous. It replaces analysis of the international situation with preparing the population to believe that a large-scale conflict is normal and necessary. This narrative is important not only for what it tells viewers in Russia, but also for the worldview the Russian government itself is guided by, creating an information environment where escalation seems a logical step. Absolute superiority, the technical myth as a political tool. It all begins with descriptions of Russian missiles allegedly surpassing Western ones, not only in speed, but also in maneuverability, modernization indices, and even the absence of names, which is presented as a sign of continuous technological development. Solovyev lists Iskander, which maneuvers like a hypersonic weapon, missiles with long codes, as if from the laboratories of the future, hypersonic Zircon, which may already be launched from ground-based systems, an air defense system capable of interfering with ballistic missiles. The key objective is to instill in the viewer the idea Russian weapons are so superior to all Western weapons that any resistance is futile. The technical details in this fragment do not so much explain as they hypnotize. This is rhetoric of intimidation, not analysis. 2. Europe as a weak link, the image of NATO stuck in the past. Solovyev then moves on to a description of European armies, and here the rhetorical device becomes crystal clear. Europe is portrayed as weak to the point of caricature. German soldiers with painted faces and Christmas tree-like clothing, exercises that are stuck in the 1920s. Plans, according to the presenter, meaningless. Predictions of the last summer of peace. Unpreparedness for war, lack of defense against tactical nuclear weapons. What the European reader will recognize here is not reality, but a psychological construct in which NATO is not an alliance of developed states with the world's largest military infrastructure, but a weak adversary that trembles at Russia's every move. This is a fundamental element of Russian propaganda. If the enemy is weak and stupid, then Russia is strong and right. It shows in the performance characteristics, but we're modernizing it very seriously. And as American military journals write, the Russians have such rapid strategic flexibility and mobility that their missiles don't have names, because the modernization indexes are constantly changing, and the onboard defense systems that they have. I didn't know that's why they don't have names, but it's no big deal. That's how they understand it. They're used to everything being loud, and the Russians don't even constantly invent new indexes. But it's true, both engines and missiles often contain long codes. Because our onboard defense systems aren't just on cruise missiles, we also have quite a serious component on the Iskander missile system. It can actually maneuver and is approaching the hit rate of hypersonic weapons. By the way, regarding hypersonics, Military Watch magazine was a little surprised. He says, "We analysed yesterday's launch at Sumy and the impact of the hypersonic Zircon missile that landed there. Apparently it didn't launch from the water, but from Crimea, from one of the capes. And perhaps the Russians have already introduced that system they were talking about, a ground-based launch system for hypersonic missiles. And that's changing completely. The design is very serious, because now, when MiG-31 jets with daggers take off, they see them and immediately scramble their air force. That same old Konstantinov is ferried somewhere, but now it will arrive before the siren goes off. Third, legitimizing sabotage hints at subversion in Europe. A very disturbing element is the romanticization of partisan actions in EU countries. Solovyev effectively discusses damage to Polish railways, suggests the emergence of German partisans, speaks of sabotage as a two-way street, asserts that Russia is not planning it, but many will want it. This is a subtle but dangerous form of innuendo. The destabilization of Europe is a natural response of oppressed or national liberation movements. In public broadcasts at the state level, such suggestions are no longer propaganda, but a justification for future subversive actions. 4. The West is a predator, explaining war through moral revolution. Towards the end, the main ideological thesis emerges. The West is a predator that must be restrained by a more ferocious predator. Russia is that predator. A simple dualistic scheme. The West is the aggressor, Russia is the defender. World politics is a struggle between animals, morality or law are secondary. He who uses force most decisively survives. In this logic, diplomacy is impossible, compromise is treacherously weak, and peace is an illusion. There remains only one path: escalation and a show of force. This is precisely what Solovyov is conveying to Russian society. Think, analyze, draw conclusions, and don't be deceived. This was the program Empire of Lies.